Hey friends, Kevin here, and I did a video recently on the pros of using a minivan as your camping vehicle, whether that's full-time or part-time. No vehicle is perfect, and I've been in a bunch of different ones over the years, mine and other people's. Minivans are great, but they're not perfect. You also need to go into this understanding that there are some cons. So we're going to go over those. Let's get to it. Now, if you're new to this channel, let me say real quick that I have two different vans that I have used the last 3 or 4 years for traveling around the country. Right now, I am in Tupelo, Mississippi, chasing the ghost of Elvis. I have a minivan that has a bed that can be either for 1 or 2 people, the way it's set up. There's videos on that. And I have this van that is a full-size cargo van and a little bit larger. Pros and cons to everything, but let's stick with the minivan as an example. Some of the cons that may or may not decide whether a minivan is going to be the right camper vehicle for you, because only you can decide what level of comfort that you're willing to deal with, and how these pros and cons relate to you personally, because there's no right answer. Everybody is different. But here we go. Number 1, bed space. You are simply going to have a little bit less bed space in a minivan. Now, I have roughly the same size bed in here. In my minivan and others, you have enough space side to side pretty much to fit a full-size mattress if you choose to. Mine's split in half, so I can have it single if I'm alone. I can use both pieces and have a full-size bed. It is crunched in a couple of inches on each side because of armrest and the way the door is made, but these foam mattresses, they can do that. That's no problem. Height-wise is okay, but in that minivan, I end up, if there's 2 of us, I always seem to end up with my feet down between the space between the front seats, sometime during the night and into the morning. But there's space for that, so it's not a big deal. But if you're a really tall person, that may be something to think about. Number 2, on the minivan, because generally you're dealing with a standard vehicle height, you don't have a lot of space in there, so you've got to make those decisions on where you're going to build that bed. My decision was made, if you saw the minivan build video, I'll link to it down in the description. My decision was made to keep it the same height as the seat heights, so I could open those sliding doors and I could sit on the bed and enjoy the view and be comfortable when I was parked somewhere. Because of that, I gave up a lot of storage space. The containers that I have under the bed are only about 7 inches tall. The upside to that is when I'm asleep, I have a whole lot of space between my face and the ceiling. If you go for more storage space and build that bed taller, you're going to be shrinking this space between your face and the ceiling. And that's one of the things you need to keep in mind on how you're going to do yours, because it's going to be awful claustrophobic if your nose is here and the ceiling is here and you're laying awake at night and you only have this much space between your face and the ceiling. Also, when you build it too tall to get more storage space underneath, you simply cannot sit up in bed. I built mine low enough that I am able to sit up in bed. If I have just the 1/2 being used, then I can sit on the bed and I have plenty of room for my legs and, whatever I'm doing if I end up late or up in the middle of the night. The third one, with a minivan, you're generally not going to have, you can do it, but you're generally not going to have extra batteries like you have in an RV, what are called house batteries that drive your other electronics. which is why most people get into some type of little rechargeable battery pack. And that's okay for running a fan. You can pretty much run a little efficient fan all night with one of those. It becomes more of an issue if you have something you need to run all night, like a CPAP machine. With one of those small battery packs, my understanding is it will run it all night. You really need a larger battery pack if you're going to run it all night and use the humidifier part of it also. I don't use a CPAP machine. I'm not an expert. I have a buddy that does. As a matter of fact, I'm going to loan him my battery pack when I get back from this trip and let him play with his. They're using my battery pack at night and see if it will get him through 1 or 2 nights. And I'll update that little test in a future video. Number 4, non-traditional campgrounds. With a larger van, cargo van, something that looks a little more like an RV, you can get by stopping more places, Walmarts and oddball parking lots and different things, than you can in a minivan, because quite honestly, whether it's true or not, and even though you can cover the windows with reflectix like I have and different things at night to keep people from being able to come peer in, whether it's true or not, you're basically going to look homeless. And not everyone goes for that. If you're down to doing campgrounds, then you're down to jumping off the interstate. You know, you may have a 20-mile drive to the campground, state park, wherever it is that you're trying to go to. So it does become a little harder, and it does become a little more expensive. That is where a larger van has a few more amenities in it, tends to save you a little money. The trade-off is you're burning much more gas because your gas mileage is worse in a larger vehicle. So you may not save anything at all with that trade-off. It just depends on the style of camping that you are doing. Now, I have been on this trip now for 4 weeks, and I have yet to have a single night in a paid campground. We'll go over that stuff in another video, but I'm fine. I'm happy. I've been in nice places. I've camped on lakes, and I have a shower every couple of days, and I'm good to go. Number 5. And this is the one that I really didn't have to deal with until this particular trip in this vehicle, the larger one. But it got me thinking about it, and that is being weather trapped. Now, we had month-long trips in that minivan and had really great weather. We had, 3 really long trips in it that rain and stuff was not really an issue. The first couple of weeks of this trip, rain was an issue. Rain was a big issue. Some places around us got snow. That wasn't the issue for us. It was rain. It was just day after day after day, 2 or 3 days in a row of this constant drizzling rain. Then we'd have an all right, nice day, and then there would be 3 or 4 more days of this constant drizzling rain. In here, I had space to move around. I can stand up in here. Things I cannot do in the minivan. Being trapped by bad weather for a long time in a minivan is going to be really, really annoying, because you don't have that ability to stand up unless you want to get out in the rain a lot. Little tip for you though, if you are traveling through places or through towns driving and you end up in these rainstorms you don't want to be in a minivan, the perfect place to get out of them is a car wash. No one uses a car wash when it's raining. So if you find yourself in a storm, you're going through a little town, you see a car wash, jump over, pull into one of those stalls, then you can get out of your minivan, you can stand there and be dry, you can watch the rainstorm, windstorm, whatever you're in, roll on by, and then get in and continue on down the highway. Again, pros and cons and just figuring out ways to do things to make whatever vehicle you're using work for you. Number 6 or 7 or whatever we're up to. Cooking inside sucks. This is another one of those bad weather things. If you're in a campground, you're camping, you're where you can do your stove and want to cook, you're going to be living on sandwiches because you aren't going to be able to run that propane stove or butane stove inside of your little minivan because the fumes will kill you. Now, I know what you're thinking, and that's, Kevin, you silly, silly goose. I've got a little table built, and I can set it right in here, and all I have to do is open the doors up, and I'm good to go. You would be, unless you're where it's windy, which was the other thing that I had to deal with the first 2 weeks of this trip. The wind blew constantly. With the rain mixed with the wind, had I been in the minivan and trying to cook on a little table and stuff inside, it just would not have been possible. Because you don't want to be trying to cook and deal with propane in a heavy wind. That is how you get really aggravated, and that is how you have accidental fires. Do not try it. And by the way, I'm not minivan bashing by any means. I love the minivan. I'm just trying to give you all pros and cons, the way I see it from my experiences in traveling with both vehicles. Which brings us up to number 8, I believe, which is bathrooms. In the minivan, if I am alone, I can have my little portable toilet that you see sitting there beside of me, and it is possible to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, or if you were unlucky enough to get sick in the middle of the night. When I have the bed pulled out completely and there's 2 of us, that doesn't happen. The only way to get that thing out and use it is to be somewhere that you can set it out, have a privacy tent, whatever. And you do that when you're stopped for a day or two and you're in a campground or you're out in the desert or whatever, and that works fine. When you're around in other areas and you're going through cities and you're driving down the highway, that's not as easy. And of course, again, I know what you're thinking. Well, hey, I can just stop at a McDonald's or wherever I'm at. I can find a little convenience store. I can find something to run into. That is just not always an option. It simply isn't. And again, weather will play a part in that. When you're trapped in a minivan or any type of small vehicle like that you don't have a bathroom and you're having to fight a really bad storm of some type. Again, these things don't happen a lot, and there's back to that pros and cons and what level of comfort that you're willing to live with for the money. For us, even on those month-long trips with the minivan, these things really did not turn into a big issue for us. They didn't. In all honesty, when I had one of the trips, I had just bought this thing, and we went ahead and took the minivan anyway because I didn't have this thing completely checked out, and we had a blast in the minivan. So, and no regrets. At no point on that trip did either of us sit there and say, boy, I wish we had taken the larger van instead. That just didn't happen. So there you have it, my thoughts on some of the cons of using a minivan as your camping vehicle. And again, some of this will apply to you, some of it won't. It depends on your style of travel, depends on your style of camping, depends on where you are going to. For the right people, in the right circumstances, a minivan makes an outstanding camper. For some other people, in some different circumstances, a minivan is going to be the type of vehicle for camping they are quickly going to grow to hate. As for whether it's right for you or not, only you can make that decision. You've heard the cons if you saw the videos with the pros. If not, I'll link to that down below also. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you have something to add to this list. I know a few of you added some ideals to the video I did on the pros of minivans and have some very good points. If you think I'm wrong about something, feel free to tell me. So we'll leave it at that for now. Come up with something good for you next. We'll see you next time.